I was 21 when it happened. My cousins and I had been visiting our family's remote winter lodge for years, but that trip, buried deep in my memories, was the one that still haunted me. The cabin sat near a frozen lake, miles away from the nearest town. My uncle owned the property, but rarely used it in the winter. He always left it open for us, just in case we wanted to escape the city for a weekend. There was something eerie about the place, though. Something off. A second, smaller cabin sat deeper in the woods, a little ways off the main property. We had never seen anyone use it. My uncle once told me it belonged to an old family friend who had passed away, and no one had touched it since. Its windows were always dark, its porch buried under years of untouched snow. The idea of an abandoned place sitting so close unsettled me, but my cousins, Nathan, Sarah, and Brian, loved using it as a hangout spot. On the third night of our trip, a storm rolled in. Heavy snow piled against the windows of the main lodge, and the wind howled through the trees. We'd planned on staying inside, drinking, and playing games, but after a few rounds, Nathan got an idea. "Let's go to the old cabin," he said, smirking. "You know, for nostalgia." Sarah rolled her eyes. "It's freezing out there." "That's the fun part. Besides, we haven't been there in years." Brian and I hesitated. Something about that cabin made me uneasy, especially in the dead of winter. But I didn't want to be the one to chicken out. So, against my better judgment, I grabbed my coat and we headed into the storm. The walk was brutal. The snow was knee-deep, and the cold seeped into my bones. By the time we reached the small cabin, I was regretting everything. Nathan shoved the door open. It was just as we'd left it. Dusty furniture, an old wood stove, and a few cobweb-covered chairs. The cold was unbearable, so Brian set to work lighting a fire while Sarah and I brushed snow off the chairs. I looked around uneasily. "You ever wonder why no one's torn this place down?" Sarah shrugged. "I mean, why bother? No one comes up here." That was true. But as the fire crackled to life, something about the space felt wrong. Nathan stretched, grinning. "You guys remember that creepy little basement?" I froze. "The what?" Brian gave him a look. "Dude, there's no basement." Nathan laughed. "Oh, come on. The trap door? We found it years ago." My stomach twisted. I had no memory of any basement. But as Nathan moved to the corner of the room, he pulled back an old rug, revealing something I hadn't noticed before. A wooden hatch in the floor. The air grew thick. "Don't," I said instinctively. Nathan ignored me. He grabbed the handle and yanked the door open, revealing a set of old wooden stairs leading into darkness. A damp, musky smell rose from below, like rotting wood and something else, something foul. Brian waved his hand in front of his face. "Jesus, it stinks." Sarah shivered. "Why does a one-room cabin need a basement?" I stepped closer, peering down. The space below was pitch black, the kind of darkness that swallowed light. Nathan smirked. "Bet none of you will go down there." "Nope," I said immediately. Brian chuckled. "I'll pass." Sarah shook her head. Nathan sighed. "Boring." He reached for the door to close it. Then we heard it. A single, deliberate knock. From below. My breath caught in my throat. My first thought was that it was an animal, a raccoon maybe. But no animal knocked like that. Nathan let out a nervous laugh. "All right, who's messing with me?" Brian frowned. "We're all up here, dumbass." We waited. Silence. Then, another knock. Louder. Sarah gasped and backed away. "Okay, we're leaving." Nathan hesitated, but I saw the fear creeping into his face. He slowly moved to close the hatch. But the moment he touched the wood, something knocked again. This time, it wasn't a single knock. It was a pattern. 3 slow taps. I felt a chill crawl up my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Nathan slammed the hatch shut and yanked the rug over it. "Okay, we're done here." Brian grabbed his coat. "Yeah, let's go." We hurried to the door, but as soon as we stepped outside, the wind nearly knocked me over. The storm had gotten worse. Snow whipped across the trees, and our footprints were already vanishing. That's when I noticed something. New tracks. Leading from the tree line to the cabin. They weren't ours. Sarah followed my gaze, and I saw her eyes widen. We didn't. Then something moved in the storm. A figure, standing at the edge of the woods, tall, still, watching. My heart pounded so hard I thought I would pass out. We weren't alone. Nathan swore under his breath. "Go. Now." We took off. Snow filled my boots as I stumbled forward, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I refused to look back. I didn't want to see if it was following. The lodge came into view, and we practically fell through the door, slamming it shut behind us. I locked it and backed away, my entire body shaking. No one spoke. We just stood there, listening. The wind howled. The walls creaked. Then, a single knock. At the window. Sarah let out a muffled scream. Brian fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking too hard to dial. Nathan grabbed the fire poker, his knuckles white. We didn't move, didn't breathe. The knock came again, slow, deliberate. And then, through the frost-covered glass, I saw it. A hand, pressing against the window, fingers long and pale. Then, it curled its knuckles and knocked 3 times, just like before. I don't remember much after that, just that we didn't sleep. We sat in silence, waiting for the sun to rise. By morning, the storm had passed. The tracks outside the cabin were gone. The snow had buried them. We never went back to that old cabin, and we never, ever opened that hatch again. I had no business driving that night. The forecast had warned of an incoming blizzard, but I had been stubborn. My best friend's wedding was that weekend, and I had promised I'd be there, no matter what. So I packed my bags, gassed up my car, and set off on a 5-hour drive through the snowy backroads of upstate New York. At first, it was manageable. Light snowfall dusting the road, my wipers pushing it aside with ease. But 2 hours in, the storm hit with a fury I wasn't prepared for. Snow thickened, blanketing the windshield faster than my wipers could clear it. The highway was invisible beneath layers of white, and soon I was just guessing where the road was. I gripped the wheel tighter, heart pounding. I should have turned back, found a hotel for the night. But there was no turning back now. Then I saw it. A glowing blue sign ahead, barely visible through the snow. Gas, food, lodging. An exit ramp appeared on my right. Without thinking, I took it, hoping to find a diner, a gas station, anywhere safe to wait out the storm. Instead, I found nothing. The exit led to a small, snow-covered road. No buildings, no lights, just an abandoned rest stop. The windows dark and lifeless. The gas station was closed, the pumps covered in ice. I cursed under my breath, checking my phone. No signal. Of course. I couldn't sit here. If the snow piled up around my car, I'd be stranded. I needed to find another route. I turned onto the first side street, a narrow road flanked by thick trees. The moment I did, I knew I had made a mistake. The snow was deeper here, untouched. No tire tracks, no signs of life. The road narrowed, twisting through the forest, and my headlights barely pierced the darkness ahead. Then my tires skidded. I gasped, gripping the wheel as my car veered sideways. The back end fishtailed, sliding toward the ditch. I slammed the brakes too hard. The tires locked, and with a sickening lurch, my car slid completely off the road. The front end buried itself in a snowbank. I sat there, breathing heavily. The engine still ran, but when I pressed the gas, the tires spun uselessly. I was stuck. Panic set in. I tried my phone again. No signal. I checked my surroundings, just snow and trees. No houses, no traffic. Then, through the swirling snow, I saw something in the distance. A building. A large wooden structure barely visible through the storm. It sat on a hill, its windows dark, but its silhouette unmistakable. A lodge, or maybe a motel. It was my only chance. I pulled my coat tighter, shoved my phone into my pocket, and stepped outside. The cold was like a slap. The wind howled, snow lashing against my face as I stumbled forward. My boots sank with each step, making the short trek feel endless. By the time I reached the building, my fingers were numb, and my breath came in ragged gasps. The lodge was old, weathered wood, icicles hanging from the roof. A faded sign above the entrance read, "Maple Ridge Inn." I knocked on the door, no answer. I tried again, harder this time. Still nothing. I reached for the handle, half expecting it to be locked, but to my surprise, it turned easily. The door creaked open. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dust and old wood. A small lobby stretched ahead, worn carpet, a reception desk with an old-fashioned bell. A single flickering light buzzed overhead. "Hello?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the silence. No answer. I hesitated, then stepped inside, brushing snow off my coat. There was no sign of life, no staff, no guests. Just eerie stillness. Then I saw them. 3 men. Sitting at a table near the fireplace. They hadn't been there a second ago. Or maybe I had been too distracted to notice. Their eyes snapped to me the moment I stepped forward. The first man was broad-shouldered, wearing a thick parka with the hood down. The second was lankier, his face half hidden by a scarf. The third, the oldest, sat with his hands clasped on the table, watching me with cold, assessing eyes. I froze. Something was wrong. They weren't guests. They weren't staff. They were just there. The old man tilted his head. "Lost?" I forced a shaky smile. Yeah. My car got stuck. I just need to call a tow." I reached for my phone. Still no signal. The 3 men exchanged glances. The big one grinned. "Storm's bad. Doubt anyone's coming out this way tonight." I swallowed. "Do you have a phone I can use?" The old man leaned back in his chair. "Phones are down." I turned toward the door. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. Then the big man stood. "Where you headed?" His voice was casual, but his body language wasn't. He moved to block the door, arms crossed. My heart pounded. "Just passing through." The lanky one smirked. "Ain't many folks pass through here." I took a slow step backward. My mind raced. I needed to get out, but they were watching me too closely. Then I said it. The words spilled out before I could think. My boyfriend's waiting for me. At the car. He's calling for help." The old man's expression darkened. The big guy frowned. The lanky one muttered something under his breath. Silence stretched. Then the old man exhaled, rubbing his chin. "You should get back to him then." The big guy hesitated but stepped aside. I nodded quickly. "Yeah, thanks." I turned and walked out, forcing myself not to run. The moment I stepped into the snow, I heard them whispering. I didn't look back. I pushed through the storm, my legs burning. My car was barely visible through the thick snow. I yanked the door open, jumped inside, and locked it. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. I glanced toward the lodge. The 3 men stood at the entrance, watching. Then, without a word, they turned and disappeared inside. I don't know what they had planned. I don't want to know. I stayed in that car, engine running, until morning. When the storm finally cleared, I managed to dig my tires free and get back on the road. I never found Maple Ridge Inn on a map. No record of it, no listings. just an empty road and a snow-covered forest. It was the kind of cold that settled in your bones. I had just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital, my legs aching, my eyelids heavy. Outside, the snow was relentless, swirling under the glow of the streetlights. The roads were slick with ice, and the few cars that passed did so cautiously, their tires crunching against the frozen pavement. I pulled my coat tighter around me, shifting from foot to keep warm. My rideshare app said my driver was 3 minutes away. I glanced around. The hospital entrance was quiet, only a few stragglers making their way to their cars. The security guard had stepped inside, leaving me alone at the curb. My phone buzzed. "Your driver has arrived." I looked up. A dark sedan idled near the curb, its headlights cutting through the falling snow. The car matched the description, black, 4-door. But the license plate was covered in slush, barely legible. I hesitated, then pulled my phone back out. The driver's name was Jason. I walked up to the car and knocked on the window. It rolled down slightly, and the driver, middle-aged, wearing a dark beanie and a thick coat, gave me a nod. "Lisa?" he asked. I paused. That wasn't my name. My stomach tightened. No. I think you have the wrong ride." He frowned and looked down at his phone. "Sorry, my app says Lisa. You ordered a ride, right?" Something in his voice made me hesitate. It was calm, but impatient. The kind of tone someone uses when they're trying to sound reassuring. The snow whipped harder around me. My fingers were already numb. Maybe the app had glitched. Maybe my name was just entered wrong. The car did match the description. I forced a smile. "Yeah. I'm going to Oak Ridge Apartments." He nodded. "Hop in. Roads are getting bad." I hesitated for just a second longer, then opened the door and slid inside. The warmth of the heater hit me immediately. The radio played softly, some kind of jazz, almost too low to hear. The car smelled faintly of pine and something else. Something metallic, almost like rust. I buckled my seatbelt. The driver pulled away from the curb, merging onto the quiet, snow-covered streets. I pulled out my phone to double-check the app. My heart sank. My ride was still arriving. I turned my head slowly, watching the man's hands grip the wheel. This wasn't my driver. Panic clawed at my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I had gotten into the wrong car and he didn't realize it. I cleared my throat. Hey, what's your name again?" He didn't look at me. "Jason," he said flatly. I swallowed hard. "Oh, weird. The app says my driver is still on the way." No response. The car picked up speed. Outside, the streets were getting emptier. The streetlights were fewer. Snow piled along the sidewalks, untouched. I forced a laugh. "I think I got into the wrong car. Maybe we should pull over." He didn't answer. Instead, he turned down a side street. The buildings here were dark, abandoned looking. The snow swallowed the road signs, but I knew we weren't heading toward my apartment. My pulse thundered in my ears. I reached for my phone, trying to discreetly share my location with my roommate. No signal. Of course. I licked my lips, trying to keep my voice steady. "So, how long have you been driving for the app?" Still, he said nothing. The car turned again, onto an unplowed road leading into a wooded area. The snow was untouched here. No tire tracks, no houses, just trees. I unbuckled my seatbelt. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. The car slowed. Then he spoke. "We're almost there." I felt my breath hitch. "Where?" Silence. The road narrowed, barely wide enough for the car. The trees loomed on either side, heavy with snow. I could see the outline of an old structure up ahead, an abandoned cabin, barely visible through the storm. I knew if we stopped, I wasn't getting out. I took a slow breath. My fingers curled around the door handle. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I started crying, loud, desperate sobs. I buried my face in my hands, shaking my shoulders, making my whole body tremble. The driver stiffened. I could feel his eyes flick toward me, uncertain. I let out a wail. I didn't mean to do it. His grip on the wheel tightened. I gasped between fake sobs. He just wouldn't stop. I didn't mean to stab him. The car jerked slightly. I kept going, my voice hysterical. Oh God, the blood. It got all over my coat. I didn't know what to do. I just ran. And I think the cops are looking for me. Silence. The driver's fingers twitched. He shifted in his seat. I let out another shuddering sob, my hands gripping my stomach like I was in pain. I think they might have put out an alert already. Oh God, what if they're tracking me? What if they pull us over? I watched him out of the corner of my eye. His jaw was clenched. His knuckles were white. And then the car slowed. I forced myself to keep shaking, to keep sobbing. And then he did it. He stopped. The tires crunched against the snow. The car idled for a moment. Then he muttered something under his breath and unlocked the doors. I didn't hesitate. I threw the door open and ran. The snow swallowed my legs, but I pushed through, breath coming in gasps. I didn't look back, didn't stop. Behind me, the car revved. The tires spun, then screeched as he sped away, disappearing into the storm. I kept running. By some miracle, I found the main road again. It wasn't until I saw flashing red and blue lights cutting through the snow that I finally collapsed. Later, the cops told me they found no record of a driver named Jason on the rideshare app. They never found the car, and when they searched the abandoned cabin where he had been taking me, they found something else. A backpack, a phone, a woman's coat. None of them were mine.